Hello, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing well. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive right in. You've got a super fun business. Tell me about Zuzu. I love the name.
Thank you. So Zuzu is a line of contemporary handmade footwear. I have all of the shoes handmade here in Buenos Aires by independent artisans, and I sell them in the US.
Got it. And what would you say is a specific problem that you solve for the people that you serve?
Well, I believe that I'm solving the problem of providing slowly made footwear to conscious consumers. Um, there is sort of a thoughtful fashion revolution happening
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of independent designers and even large companies looking at ways to reduce their impact on the environment and, you know, conduct labor in a more fair way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of attention paid to slow fashion in the terms of the garment industry,
Okay.
but in the footwear industry, it's not as there's not as many options available in the market. So that is what I aim to do.
Got it. And what made you decide that you were going to be the one to solve this problem?
Well, as a fashion designer from the footwear industry, from the more formal footwear industry, I got really tired of designing. I wouldn't say it was designing so much as it was knocking off or in like designing things that are like very closely inspired by other designers' things
Okay.
in the footwear industry. So the situation in the footwear industry would be, you would pull images off the internet, look at
Okay.
runway trends, and make versions of those shoes,
Okay.
choose them just so, and send them to China to be made. And you would make, hundreds of samples and whittle them down to a small collection. And ultimately, that small collection would go to market. You'd overproduce those quantities, and you know they would end up in the landfill. What can I
Oh,
say?
no good. No good.
So I just got tired of the lack of originality, the wastefulness, and decided that I wanted to do a collection of shoes that was made with more intention.
Very cool. I love the idea. All right. So now you're a designer in industry. Now you're a designer on your own. So let's switch gears about your experience as an entrepreneur because you sounds like you had the design part down and you wanted to own more of that process. But
Yeah.
what when you decided to become an entrepreneur, what would you say was the biggest barrier and mindset that you experienced that may have limited your success in some way? And how did you overcome it? Because entrepreneurship can be a bear.
Um, okay, so I think the biggest barrier, I'll talk about like actual barriers and perceived ones
Okay.
first.
Okay.
The actual barrier to me becoming an entrepreneur was the fact that I started off with very little capital.
Okay.
It's totally self financed. I don't have a wealthy family,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't use loans. So the actual barrier was a financial one, just having to do things little at a time, introducing one product at a time,
Right.
and just you know trying to trying to tell a story with like very little resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I would say the perceived barrier is, um, I never really feel like, whatever my benchmark is, like, there's always another benchmark for success. So I don't, even though I'm making it as a designer, and this is my only gig, I dedicate this to myself full time. I still don't feel like it's a success story yet.
So, tell me, like you said, I don't know if there are probably most entrepreneurs probably rarely feel like they've made it and they're a success. There's always some elements of climbing, but that financial part of it is a real big issue. So, have you found creative ways to continue to make sure that you are maximizing all the funds that you do have available so that you are, one, able to live, and two, able to grow your business?
Um, let's see. Creative ways to do it. Well, okay, one thing that I can say that I've changed is I used to travel a lot to show my product at shows, and I'm part of a larger circle of independent makers and designers who do the same thing. But it's logistically complicated for shoes, traveling long distances with two suitcases that have a 50-pound limit. And
Yeah.
top of that, a way to display the shoes once you're there.
Right.
And then on top of paying for the booth fees and accommodations and transportation, I was spending somewhere in the ballpark of $1,200 to $1,500 per trip
Okay.
to show my product to people, sell it, get it out there. And after a while, I just realized that it was taking a lot of money out of my my resources, and a more effective way to reach people without physically being there was through Facebook ads. So
Right.
I think that was one major shift that really produced the same or better results with half the effort.
Right, right, and probably a lot less hassle, I'm sure, as well, because traveling can be super challenging from time to time, especially whenever you have like all those extra, you have that luggage and all that stuff with you. So,
Yeah.
what would you say? And I guess there's probably a unique sort of balance, a delicate balance that you have to strike in terms of making sure that you are able to create and present your design aesthetic while also staying in tune to the needs of what it is that your customers want. So how do you make sure that you know what's going on in the market while, making sure that you're able to still put your brand, your style, your unique mark on it?
Well, that's something I'm always trying to figure out. I guess it's a combination of knowing the market really, really well and knowing where else my customer shops.
Okay.
Being aware of what other brands are doing, but not obsessing over it, and just really listening to customer feedback whenever I do have pop-ups,
Okay.
whenever I do host events where my product is there, and I'm just all about observing the other brands people are wearing. Also on Instagram, if I have like a particularly vocal customer, I'll, see what other brands she's following, look through her feed and see, what choices she makes in other, in other categories, product categories, let's say.
Right.
Just to see the similarities, and I think that informs what I do. And then my theory is that it's important to, develop something that the market wants, but put a unique touch on it so that it's a reason to give the customer a reason to buy yours versus someone else's.
For sure. Now, how do you keep it all together? I hear a lot of people talking about creativity, and they say that they're not a creative person, or if they are creative, sometimes they wait for the inspiration to come to them. What do you do to fuel your creative habit so that you can produce on a regular basis, but also get things done? Because you're not just creative in your business, you've got the business part of running the business, which isn't always creative. It's, just very tactical, boring, sometimes, very monotonous. So do you have any specific habits that help you keep all that together?
Well, I think when I'm stuck, I do a technique that's called scratching. It's basically research. Visual research. I think even if it's what I'm doing is more strategic in a let's say in a marketing sense or an ad creative sense, I do an enormous amount of visual research. And if I'm stuck creatively, I go to a museum. I go to a museum. I think that's, I watch movies, I read books, I look at everything, anything, I walk around. So that's my technique for fueling my creative habit.
That's wonderful. And what do you do when you're out and you have an idea come to you? Do you jot it down feverishly in a notebook or on your phone, or do you just kind of hope you'll remember whenever you get to your workspace?
Well, I think okay, so I use what are they called? iNotes a lot. Is
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, iNotes. I keep I always carry a notebook with me, but I think that like my more since my phone is usually in my hand, I usually just like jot quick notes down. And whenever I'm in like to that, I spend a lot of time thinking about the same idea, and it kind of takes shape in my head. So by the time I'm actually putting, pencil to paper, I know where I want to go with it. So there's a gestation period that ideas like spend in my mind,
Okay.
and by the time I'm ready to take note of it or write it down, it's pretty well formed. That's what I would say.
Got it. What would you say is your superpower?
Oh, my superpower. That's a good question. Can I say designing shoes?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I think it's designing shoes.
When did you recognize that it was that?
Um, I think it was when I went to fashion school. While I was in fashion school, I was really struggling with clothing design,
Okay.
and maybe it's because I'm very clumsy with my fingers, and I wasn't really doing that well at manipulating fabric, but somehow I just took to leather really well, and I was so obsessed to the point of annoying, like, my classmates and professor about, like, shoemaking and the whole process and everything. And I think that's when I realized that I'm a shoe person.
That's great whenever something sort of just kind of grabs you and captures you and it just kind of consumes so much of your thought process that
Yeah.
you kind of know I need to stick here.
Yeah. And like my shoe instructor looked at me, like after asking him a really intense question, he looked at me, he said, "It's just your first shoe. It's not that serious."
Oh wow.
And I was like, okay, well, I think something has stuck.
Something is here. No, I love it when that happens. What would you say are your three keys to success?
Three keys to success. Okay. Regular exercise. Um, I think techniques for forming and developing ideas,
Mm-hmm.
learning those techniques, and uh, money management.
Okay. All right. Talk a little bit more about exercise. Is that part of the whole creative process that kind of helps you bring good things back to your business?
Oh, well, yeah, like physical exercise, in terms of like, grounding my energy and, staying centered and just burning off like like negativity. I
Right.
think that's really important. I think staying positive. I think if there's a fourth one on the list, I have to say staying positive.
It's super important, especially if you find yourself hitting roadblock after roadblock and you got to figure out a way to get around them.
Yeah.
The having thinking negatively or kind of being down in the dumps will be a little bit tougher to help you find a solution to get around it. This
Yeah.
has been super cool diving into this world, this design world. It's so different than what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Where can people find you if they want to have a look at your shoes and all the different things that you're doing?
Well, you can shop my collection on my website. The website is zouxou.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. You can search for me by the handle Zuzu Shoes. And Meg Shop in New York also stocks my collection.
Got it. Well, I'll have all that information in the show notes so people can So people are able to access it pretty easily. One other question: you you are a shoe designer, and
Mm.
I imagine that whenever you were figuring out how, when you were in design school, and then whenever you worked for other people, the manufacturing process probably went off, like you said, it went to China, it went to other places. Now, as a designer making your own shoes, how did you have to figure out, like, what did you, was it a difficult barrier for you to figure out, like, exactly how you wanted them made and to actually get somebody to do it for you? Because I imagine you're not the shoemaker.
No, no, I'm definitely not the maker. So yeah, it was a huge process of trial and error to find our maker. We currently work with about 3 to 4 artisans, depending on the workload, um, who set their own hours, who negotiate their own rate of pay, and we actually couldn't be luckier to find the makers that we work with. In the beginning, we were working with people through word of mouth. It's all everyone we work with. It's been through word of mouth, and in the beginning, there were issues of reliability and I guess execution, like uh, taking quality control to like an artisanal level into
Mm-hmm.
something that is viable in the U.S. market wasn't easy. Just defining the standard, I think, was like one of the biggest challenges. Like, saying this is okay, this is not okay,
Mm-hmm.
and this is why. Yes, it's still a shoe. Yes, you can still wear it, but it's not perfect.
Got
You
it.
know
Got
that.
it.
And since things are handmade, it's there. Perfection can't really exist, but there's always a fine line, and defining that line has really been the biggest challenge for
Got,
us.
got it. Now, how are you different now as an entrepreneur, as a person overall, now that you're an entrepreneur versus before you were?
Oh, I feel so much more existential ease, I would say, and less in some ways, depending on the day. But like, yeah, I just always felt a little bit unsatisfied doing, working in other companies and doing things the way that they were to me, told to me to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I there was just some sort of like restlessness. And now, now it's more. I definitely feel like I have a purpose, more of a purpose. Like before, I didn't feel like my work or what I did amounted to anything,
Oh,
and and now it feels more. Yeah, now working, I'd have to say, working for myself feels more meaningful, and and that's had a positive effect on me overall.
that's a beautiful feeling. I'm glad that you've gotten to that point. It's one that everybody, you want everybody to get the experience, that feeling where you feel more like, well, one, that your work has purpose and meaning as you're going
Yeah,
about what you do, and it's something that you really do love. So, congratulations. All
thank
right, well,
you.
before I let you go, I do have one other question just to dive inside your head a little bit more. And that's to deliver a line from a movie that speaks to you and explain why you chose that one.
Oh, okay. Uh, if I'm trying to remember it exactly. If your shoes are uncomfortable, change them because you can't change your feet. Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
And
It's
it,
from Monsieur Ibrahim.
very good, and it's of course perfect for you because you're a shoe
Yeah,
designer. But it
yeah,
just speaks to that larger thing about life and finding the path that works for you. And as entrepreneurs, there's pretty much almost nothing that we can't change about our business. We write the rules. So if there's something that isn't working for us, we can find a way to fix it.
exactly.
Make adjustments. All right, Catherine, this has been great. Thank you again.
Thank you, Sonia.